No one in Lecture Hall 12 expected an act of chemical warfare before lunch. The interspecies nutrition seminar had just reached the section titled Substances Universally Regarded as Lethal, when Daniel, the sole human exchange cadet aboard the Marzul, casually reached into his backpack, pulled out a dented silver can, and cracked it open with a crisp psss. The hiss of escaping gas cut through the air like a blaster discharge. Instructor Zell Thor froze mid-slide transition. The Grailian beside Daniel dropped his datapad. A Krixari in the front row shrieked and launched itself behind a bioshield. And Daniel? He just took a sip. A long one. The room didn't just go silent, it locked up. Dozens of aliens stared in horrified silence as Daniel swallowed a mouthful of what, to them, was a highly reactive industrial solvent laced with acidic gas. The sort of thing their homeworld stored behind radiation seals with a 6 warning sign minimum. Then he burped. Softly, apologetically. And that was when the alarm started. A glowing red containment breach warning spiraled across the walls. Emergency shutters slammed down over the vents. Containment domes dropped over several high-risk species. 2 Grailians fainted, their translucent membranes twitching in shock. A Vern shrieked so loudly its secondary auditory fronds detached. Instructor Zell Thor dove behind the lecture dais, shouting something about acidic vapor vectors. Daniel blinked and looked at his can. This, he said, more confused than anything. But the room was already in a state of organized disintegration. Panic spread with algorithmic speed. Biohazard drones screeched into the room, clamping onto the walls, spraying neutralizing foam that looked alarmingly like whipped cream. A force field slammed down around Daniel's seat so fast, his arm got a light static burn. He stood up instinctively. The can, now 3/4 full, was still in his hand. I didn't spill anything, he tried, just as the floor shuddered, and a Class 5 hazmat containment team burst through the secondary wall in full atmospheric shells, carrying pressurized decontamination lances. One of them screamed. It was a mechanical scream, courtesy of a tactical AI pre-programmed for contact with oxygen-based corrosives. Solvent breach, human showing signs of ingestion, body cavity compromise probable. Daniel barely had time to exhale before the hazmat lead pointed a thermal scanner at his abdomen and fired. A small, pale blue holographic display popped into view, showing a simplified rendering of his digestive tract. The AI whirred. pH anomaly detected. Bubble formations indicate possible internal cavitation. Gastrointestinal meltdown imminent. Daniel stared. Wait, what? 2 mechs grabbed his arms and wrestled him onto a padded stretcher. I'm fine, it's just sparkling water. Solvent name recognized. Subclassification, carbonated dihydrogen monoxide. Hazard grade, gamma 9. Corrosive under pressure, harmful on inhalation, fatal on ingestion. Daniel tried to sit up. It's lemon-flavored. The AI went silent for a half-second. Then, citrus acid detected. Compound synergy with H2O solvent may accelerate tissue decay. The stretcher hissed and sealed him inside a biopod with a damp thunk. 14 minutes later, Daniel was floating naked in a diagnostic gel pod. The medical bay was sealed, the temperature kept just above Terran neutral. 3 med drones hovered nearby, rotating around him, occasionally blinking warning lights. One kept trying to inject a sedative. Another hovered near his feet, whispering concern in 4 tonal languages. The third drone, the one labeled MX-97, had stopped blinking altogether. Can you repeat your species' filtration organ function? It asked, after scanning his lower abdomen for the 5th time. Daniel sighed. For the last time, yes. Humans have kidneys, 2 of them. They filter blood. The water gets reabsorbed. Excess gets urinated out. It's very standard, I think. What is urinated out? I pee. The drone paused. You expel the solvent. Voluntarily. In public? Well, not in public, but the solvent passes through your body without denaturing your internal membranes? Daniel shifted awkwardly in the gel. I mean, unless you've got kidney stones, or you're dehydrated, or you drink, like, pool water. But regular water is fine. This stuff? He pointed to the nearly empty can, which someone had retrieved and quarantined in a vacuum-sealed evidence bag across the room. I drank that on the shuttle ride here. Carbonated. Yeah. It tastes better that way. The drone recalculated for the 4th time. The carbonation increases reactivity. The gas expands within your stomach lining. It forms bubbles. Our scans show cavitation near the pyloric sphincter. That's indigestion. Indigestion is fatal? No, it's annoying. The drone hovered silently for a moment. Its camera lens zoomed in slowly, as if trying to make sense of the entire species through Daniel's navel. Your digestive anatomy is incompatible with our safety protocols. A secondary AI will initiate diplomatic contact with your planetary council to confirm these claims. Because I drank water? Because you drank solvent laced with an acidic gas compound inside a nutrition class focused on hazardous ingestion. 3 hours later, Daniel was finally released from the gel tank. Not because he was cleared, but because the diplomatic liaison from Earth had confirmed, via a very tired video call, that humans do in fact drink carbonated water recreationally. And yes, the burping was expected. A tribunal of xenobiologists, cultural liaisons, and 2 security officers stood around the medbay with an air of nervous reverence. Instructor Zell Thor remained behind a polycarb blast shield. Daniel was wearing a sterile examination gown, 2 sizes too small, and holding a cup of actual water. Flat, non-lethal, alien-approved. "This isn't even cold," he muttered, sipping it. The lead xenobiologist, a Threxian with a jellyfish-like locomotion pattern and 3 nervous stammer modes, cleared his vocal cavity. "Cadet Daniel, we require clarification on your species' relationship to dihydrogen monoxide. Specifically, you consume this daily?" "Yes." "In what quantities?" "About 2 liters, more if it's hot." "And you bathe in it?" Daniel paused. He looked at the cluster of note-taking tentacles and blinking eye stalks. "Yeah." Whispers erupted. One Yevian dropped its data stylus. The Threxian held up one of Daniel's confiscated cans using tongs. "And this specific iteration, carbonated, citrus-enhanced, this is consumed for pleasure?" Daniel nodded. "I had 2 with lunch. This one was for the break." The Threxian's eye membranes rippled. "It is used to etch composite metals on my world." Another alien spoke up. "We sanitize surgical equipment with it. Unpressurized." A third added, "It stripped the outer layer of our biosuits in under 4 glorns." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You ever try it with cucumber flavor?" A horrified silence fell over the chamber. By the next rotation, the incident had become a circulating case study on all 14 decks of the Marzul. The nutritional seminar was suspended pending chemical incident review. Zeal Thor filed an official request to teach from behind a permanent biosafety screen. The Gralians demanded vapor filters for future lectures. Daniel, meanwhile, was confined to quarters for his own safety, which meant he sat on his bunk in gym shorts watching Terran sitcoms, while 3 separate alien science teams scanned his vitals remotely. They didn't shut off his food delivery, though, and he still had 1 more can of cucumber lime sparkling water in the mini cooler under his desk. He cracked it open just to listen to the hiss. And somewhere across the ship, a distant alarm went off again. Daniel hadn't been planning to start a diplomatic incident with a can of fizzy water, but by the time the 3rd warning siren blared through Deck 12 and his private quarters were locked under environmental quarantine, it became clear that planning wasn't something the Marzul considered a human strength. He hadn't even sipped the cucumber lime one, just cracked it open. And now his room smelled faintly of ozone, and a trauma drone was holding position 6 feet outside the sealed Plex window with a containment lance pointed squarely at his chest. Its logic core had already declared him chemically volatile. He took a seat on the edge of his bunk and raised both hands slowly. "Okay, I won't drink it." The trauma drone didn't move. Daniel sighed. "I said I won't drink it. You want me to pour it out?" Its red status light flickered yellow. "Solvent dispersal in gaseous form is prohibited. Containment in liquid state preferable to vapor state." "You're saying leave it in the can?" "Affirmative. Seal integrity priority 1. Daniel rolled his eyes and gently placed the can back into his desk cooler, which he closed with exaggerated care. The drone relaxed a few degrees, though the lance remained half-charged and humming. He rubbed his face and slumped onto the bed. It wasn't just overkill. It was starting to become surreal. 6 hours later, the door finally unsealed with a gentle chime. The diplomatic officer who entered wore a dark blue translation collar and the face of someone who had explained what carbonation is too many times in too many languages. "I'm Liaison Commander Yara Griggs," she said briskly, stepping around the trauma drone as if it weren't still hovering like a stressed wasp. "Please tell me you haven't opened another one." Daniel gestured to the cooler. "Uncracked. Under surveillance." Griggs relaxed fractionally, then handed him a clean uniform. "Put that on. There's a council debrief scheduled in an hour, and if you even mention bubbles before they do, I can't guarantee your safe extraction." Daniel frowned. "Am I under arrest?" "You're technically a chemical anomaly in an interspecies contamination event. And, I quote, an ambulatory solvent dispersal unit with unpredictable gaseous emissions." "I burped once." Griggs gave him a look. "They logged it. It's under audio-chemical discharge." Daniel groaned. "You're kidding." "I'm not. So clean up. You'll be demonstrating your internal systems in front of 36 xenonutritional scientists. Some of them are still wearing hazard suits. Also, no jokes. Not even a little one." He opened his mouth. "No jokes." The mediation auditorium had been converted into a temporary tribunal chamber, with the word tribunal conspicuously replaced with cooperative scientific panel on every screen. Half the chairs were occupied by beings in sealed suits or environmental domes. 2 Threxians floated in individual stasis bubbles. Instructor Zell Thor remained behind a fresh blast shield with a personal oxygen feed. Daniel sat alone at a central demonstration station, wearing the clean uniform, which still smelled faintly of sterilizing solution. A floating visualizer blinked to life. A Yevian biophysicist, its central mass pulsing gently, began the session. "We will begin with a baseline inquiry. Subject, Daniel, please describe your species' baseline solvent requirements for homeostasis." Daniel cleared his throat. "Humans need water to live, around 2 to 3 liters a day, more with heat or activity. It helps regulate body temperature, supports digestion, and delivers nutrients throughout the body. Your cardiovascular system uses the solvent as a transport medium?" "Yeah, blood is mostly water." An audible gasp rippled through the chamber. Adrenaline Ambassador actually retched into a disposal pod. The Threxian's eye bulbs blinked asynchronously in a way Daniel now recognized as deep, unsettled horror. "Your brain," croaked Zelthor from behind his barrier, "is also composed of this compound?" 75%, Daniel replied, folding his hands. There was a full 6 seconds of stunned silence before a Krau technician tentatively raised a gloved tendril. "And you absorb this compound directly through your oral intake valve?" "You mean my mouth?" "Yes." "Without membrane degradation?" "Well, yeah, that's what it's for." This was followed by even more silence. The Yevian finally flicked its tendrils in defeat. "I cannot reconcile this with standard metabolic tolerance models." Griggs leaned over Daniel's shoulder. "Visual demonstration, now." With exaggerated care, Daniel reached under the display table and removed a sealed Terran educational model, an anatomical cutaway of the human digestive tract. It had been fabricated hastily from the ship's general-use 3D printer, and parts of it were still warm. He pointed to the esophagus. "Solvent travels down this tube to the stomach, where it mixes with acids." Adrenaline passed out. Daniel paused. "You all okay?" A Vern diplomat waved a 6-fingered hand weakly. "Please continue," slowly. He traced the path to the kidneys. "These filter the blood. Excess water is sent to the bladder for removal." "Removal?" one of the Threxians rasped. "We urinate," Daniel said, with the quiet resignation of someone explaining this for the 9th time. The Yevian slowly turned translucent green. "Voluntary excretion of unprocessed solvent." "Yes. Or sweat. That's another way we expel it." The translator buzzed for a moment. Then, "Your kind leaks solvent. On purpose." Daniel shrugged. Sometimes we do it just from standing in the sun too long. Zell Thor curled in on himself. I don't understand, Akral murmured. You not only survive contact, you require it. Your species self-regulates a hazardous compound internally. Daniel looked around. It's just water, you know, H2O. To us, said the Threxian coldly. It is an industrial-grade corrosive used to dissolve biofilms from reactor shielding. And you add gas to it? Zell Thor sputtered. To increase its acidity? Daniel scratched the back of his neck. It's not that acidic. I mean, sure, it stings in the nose if it's got too much fizz, but it's not dangerous. You are contradicting the chemical analysis, the Kral said sharply. Our sensors identified carbonic acid formation and pressurized gas saturation. This is known to etch ceramics. It also goes great with tacos, Daniel offered. Griggs pinched the bridge of her nose. Focus, Daniel. The Yevian's neural mass pulsed in agitated ripples. We attempted to replicate your beverage's composition using a proxy digestive model based on Threxian bioparameters. The result was spontaneous tissue denaturation. The Threxian to his left blinked slowly. The test subject is recovering in an oxygen bath. It is unlikely they will attempt another taste. Daniel exhaled. Well, yeah, it's not for everyone. By the following standard cycle, a formal update was released from the Intergalactic Dietary Safety Council. Substance update: carbonated dihydrogen monoxide. Toxicity level: lethal to 98% of registered galactic species. Risk level: industrial solvent, corrosive under pressure. Human classification: non-toxic, recreational beverage. Consumption strongly discouraged, unless equipped with Terran-grade renal filtration systems and mucosal membranes rated for acid-neutral resilience. It was displayed in every galley, lab, and training hall across the Marzul. Below it was a still frame of Daniel mid-sip, looking vaguely confused and holding a can of sparkling lime water. And thus, a beverage no alien dared to taste became a ship-wide legend. 2 days later, Daniel stood before a much smaller audience in Lecture Hall 12, now equipped with chemical shields, ventilation hoods, and an automatic suppression system keyed specifically to the sound frequency of a can opening. He wore civilian clothes and a cautious smile. 2 guards stood at the exits, not for him, exactly, but for the protection of everything else. Welcome, Zell Thor said in a brittle tone, to the special guest lecture. A large screen behind Daniel lit up. Bubbles and Bravery, a human's guide to drinking danger. Guest speaker, Cadet Daniel Myers. Species 768 tons. Homo sapiens, Terran, class. Daniel held up a sealed can. This time, it's just a prop, he said. No one laughed. He cleared his throat. Let's begin with carbonation. The lecture ended in silence. Not stunned, panicked silence, this was different. It was the kind of silence born of species whose central nervous systems had run out of interpretations. 38 sapiens sat rigidly in their reinforced seats, each one carrying a fresh copy of Bubbles and Bravery. The lecture's transcript now officially filed as Galactic Exchange Curriculum Supplement 921F. Risk Culture in Liquid Consumption Behaviors. Daniel stood at the podium, unscrewing the cap of a bottle plastic this time, and empty, to avoid triggering further alarms. He demonstrated the glug-glug motion of water consumption, the rhythmic swallowing, the post-drink sigh of satisfaction. Each gesture was catalogued. One of the Krixari even drew diagrams. Instructor Zell Thor, still stationed behind the transparent blast shield, activated his collar mic with a slightly shaky exhale. Thank you, Cadet Myers. This concludes our seminar. Class dismissed slowly, in quadrants, and no sudden exhalations, please. Daniel remained at the front as aliens filed out in nervous clusters. Several paused to nod respectfully. A few gave wide, berth-like arcs around the table where his props were displayed. One Vern cadet glanced longingly at the sealed canister on display, then twitched and hurried out. But one remained behind. He was Threxian, one of the youngest on the ship, by the look of his still molting foreplates. A junior xenonutrition trainee with soft spines, large pupils, and the caution level of someone who'd once inhaled his own sanitizer mist by mistake. Can I speak with you privately? He asked, antennae flexing back nervously. Daniel gave a slow nod and waved him toward the side of the lecture hall, where a quieter alcove had been shielded for sociocultural decompression after the beverage incident. The Threxian perched stiffly on a bench across from him. For several long seconds, he just stared at the sealed canister Daniel now held loosely in his palm. "It's not open," Daniel said gently. The Threxian's pupils dilated. "I know. I just wanted to ask what it feels like." Daniel blinked. "Drinking it?" "Yes, the real one, the sparkling kind. Fizzy, a little sharp, kinda like a gentle punch on the inside of your face, but in a good way." The Threxian squirmed. "How can that be pleasurable? Everything about it violates safe ingestive protocols. The carbonation alone?" "I think part of it is that it's uncomfortable," Daniel said after a moment. "Not painful, but strange. Something about it just wakes you up." The Threxian was quiet for a moment. "I reviewed the incident footage," he admitted softly. "I watched the part where you swallowed it, and then afterward, when you were detained. You didn't panic." Daniel hesitated. "I was confused, not brave. I honestly thought they were arresting me for littering." "Still, you didn't collapse, or melt. You didn't even vomit." "I almost did in the gel tank, but not from the drink, from the way the diagnostic drone kept poking my liver." The Threxian didn't laugh, but his eye rings fluttered. Then he leaned forward, mandibles twitching faintly in what might have been focus. "I want to try it." Daniel immediately stiffened. "Not a good idea. I've read everything in the Council's advisory. You'd be the only non-human in recorded galactic history to drink it and stay conscious." "There was one other," the Threxian said quietly. "Research Cadet Herrick's due. He tried less than a milliliter and slipped into a temporary coma." Daniel nodded. "And you want to beat that record?" "I don't want to be reckless. I want to understand. I can't stop thinking about it. The idea that something universally corrosive could be part of someone else's everyday life. It's like seeing someone warm their face with fire." Daniel leaned back slowly. "You really want to sip it?" The Threxian nodded once, slowly. Daniel sighed. "Then we're doing this with supervision." The Marzul Medical Bay had never hosted a beverage trial before. By the time Daniel and the Threxian cadet arrived, now formally identified as trainee Neelix, half the diagnostic staff was already prepped. Scanning drones were calibrated. Emergency sedatives were on standby. A full cardiopulmonary bypass suite had been readied just in case. Daniel handed over the can like it was a sacred relic. It was lime-flavored, gentler than citrus, less acidic than grapefruit. "This is the mildest one I brought," he said. "Still, you should be ready for it to sting, maybe even burn." Neelix placed the can in a neutralizer cradle. Its temperature and pressure were checked 3 separate times. One drone verified that the carbonation levels were within human enjoyment range. Another verified that the consumption would violate 17 Threxian biomedical safety laws. Neelix's instructor, a senior nutritionist named Velt, hovered nearby, limbs visibly shaking. "This is an irresponsible and ill-advised experiment," he hissed. "You're risking your neurocircuits for what? Curiosity?" "Understanding," Neelix replied, eyes fixed on the can. "I want to know what bravery tastes like." The room fell still. Daniel gently placed a drinking straw into the can and slid the cradle closer. "You sure about this?" Neelix didn't answer. He bent forward, braced his internal musculature the way his species did before contact with irritants, and slowly sipped. The reaction was instant. Neelix's back arched. His thoracic plates flared wide. His pupils shrank to pinpoints. He exhaled sharply through his filtration vents, then sat completely motionless. Every monitor in the room jumped. "Neurological spike," someone shouted. "Cranial inflammation. Get the neural dampeners." Daniel stepped forward, eyes wide. "He's not seizing. Look at his expression." They did. Neelix wasn't convulsing. He was vibrating. His mandibles were twitching in a pattern Daniel hadn't seen before, like a cross between stunned silence and delighted horror. "It tastes like 1,000 knives dancing on my core tissue," Neelix whispered. "Okay, you're done," Daniel said, reaching for the cradle. But Neelix leaned forward again. Another sip. "Trainee," Velt barked. Neelix stood, trembling. No more. But I tasted it. I felt it, like holding thunder in my mouth. Daniel helped him to a padded seat, where medics immediately began scans. But Neelix was smiling now, or at least the Threxian version of it, which involved a gentle retraction of the jaw hinges and a flutter of eye membranes. It was horrifying, he said breathlessly, and exhilarating, like drinking an electric storm. Daniel gave a soft laugh. That's sparkling water, all right. The medics gave him a cautious thumbs up. Vitals stable, pH buffering nominal, mild epithelial irritation. Velt shook his head in utter disbelief. You've rewired his sensory profile. Do you understand what you've done? Daniel looked down at the empty can. I think I just gave him his first soda. Word spread within hours. Neelix was escorted back to his quarters under observation, but not before being hailed by no fewer than 12 alien cadets, all asking the same question: what did it taste like? His answer varied. To a Gralian, like compressed starlight on my tongue. To a Crixari, like inhaling crystallized fear, then laughing. To a Vern, like tasting what the void dreams about when it rains. By the next rotation, Neelix's sip became an official entry in the Marzul medical logs, tagged under cross-species tolerance events. It was accompanied by a cautionary note from medical AI MX97 that read, "Do not emulate human beverage behavior without extensive anatomical review. If you have a stomach, kidneys, or mucus, consult a physician first." Daniel received 37 requests to observe his next drink. 4 alien journalists asked to interview his kidneys. A small sculpture was commissioned on Deck 6, depicting a sealed can atop a biosuit glove with the title Reckless Curiosity. He declined to open another drink in public. For now. By the end of the standard week, Daniel's digestive tract had become the subject of 6 academic journals, 1 interstellar safety alert, and an art piece titled Organ of Containment that made his lower abdomen look a lot more heroic than he felt. He hadn't meant for any of this. The can had been meant as a little refreshment, a familiar piece of Earth in an unfamiliar galaxy. He didn't drink it for rebellion or attention. He didn't drink it to make a point. He drank it because it was cold, fizzy, and made boring lectures a little less boring. But now his colon had a citation. The galactic exchange vessel Marzul had officially adjusted its environmental sensors to ignore the sound frequency range produced by Terran aluminum tabs under pressure. The change was implemented cautiously, ship-wide, but with a warning. If carbonated solvent is detected outside of human quarters or lecture demonstration zones, initiate Level 2 review. Level 5 if citrus. Daniel's inbox, once reserved for weekly updates from Earth and occasional cafeteria polls, now overflowed with inquiries. Some were medical. Does the carbonation aid in nutrient absorption, or is it purely masochistic? Some were curious. How often do humans consume this solvent, and why not just use flat variants? And some were just confused. Do all human foods sting? But the one that stood out arrived with a council seal. A simple, curt invitation to address the Intergalactic Dietary Safety Council in a special session. Topic: Terran liquid habits and cross-species hazard reclassification. Daniel read the message twice, then a third time. It wasn't a request. It was a summons. The council chamber was cold. Not because of the air, but because of the tension. 37 delegates representing planetary health ministries, biological safety bureaus, and nutritional regulation authorities sat in an arched semicircle. They looked down from their seats with clinical reserve and cautious interest. In the center of the chamber, Daniel stood on a circular platform with a small table beside him. On the table, 1 can of sparkling water, sealed, chilled. Griggs had warned him not to open it unless explicitly asked. Some of them are still convinced it's a misclassified weapon, she'd said. One Scanary delegate tried to classify it as a Class B acidic propellant. Do they know it's sold in vending machines back home? They think your vending machines are military dispensers. Daniel didn't ask what they thought about vending machine sandwiches. The council chair, an ancient Varnali with breath-slowing implants and a sense of humor fossilized under centuries of bureaucracy, leaned forward. Cadet Myers, it wheezed, you stand before this council not in judgment, but in analysis. We seek clarification. We seek understanding. Daniel gave a small nod. I'll try not to confuse you more than I already have. A few delegates twitched at that. The Varnali continued. We begin with intent. What purpose does this compound serve in your culture? Daniel took a breath. Pleasure. Sometimes hydration, but mostly pleasure. A Skellion raised one glittering limb. You enjoy the sensation of internal disruption? It's not disruption, Daniel said. It's stimulation. Cold, sharp, fizzy. It tickles the inside of your mouth. You feel it before you taste it. It's a little uncomfortable. But it's a good kind of uncomfortable. The room murmured. You enjoy microacidic mucosal irritation? Another delegate asked, scandalized. Only because we can, Daniel answered. That's the thing. It's not because we're trying to hurt ourselves. It's because our bodies can handle it, and we're weird enough to enjoy pushing those edges. Silence followed. Then the Varnali gestured toward the can. We ask cautiously that you demonstrate the act of consumption, but only if containment measures are confirmed. Daniel nodded. He'd prepared for this. Slowly, he removed a transparent face shield from under the table and locked it into place. The chamber's air filtration system activated automatically. A low hum vibrated through the floor. He lifted the can. Everyone leaned back slightly. With a practiced hand, he cracked it open. Pssh, pssh. The hiss reverberated in the chamber like a detonation. Several delegates twitched, a few ducked. One poor aquatic envoy sprayed a stress secretion and had to be discreetly mopped up. Daniel let the sound fade. Then calmly, deliberately, he took a sip. A short one. He held it in his mouth, then swallowed. Another sip, this one longer. And then, he let out a soft, polite burp. The chamber froze. Even the air filtration paused. Daniel lifted the can again. I'm not dying, I'm not melting, I'm not even cramping. He looked around the room, meeting as many eyes or eye equivalents as he could. You all treat this like it's fire. And I guess for you, it is. But for us, it's water, with bubbles. That doesn't mean we're better, or tougher, or more resistant. It just means our biology let us turn something dangerous into something delightful. He placed the can back on the table. Think about what that means. Not about us, but about what's possible. If one species can drink what another uses to sterilize surgical tables, maybe there's more crossover than we thought. Maybe it's not just about danger, maybe it's about adaptation. No one spoke for a while. Then, the Scanary delegate leaned into their mic. Does it come in flavors? Laughter rippled through the chamber, nervous, light, but real. Even the Varnali smiled. 3 rotations later, the Marzul's cafeteria opened a sealed viewing Terran beverage exhibit where guests could watch, from a safe distance, as a human drank sparkling water. Daniel didn't love the glass cage they gave him, but he figured it was better than another decontamination gel tank. Neelix sat nearby, sipping tea made from Threxian-safe herbal infusions, his mandibles still tingling from the memory of his historic sip. He glanced at Daniel between sips. Do you ever get used to the sting? Daniel smirked. That's the point. You're not supposed to. A group of cadets gathered at the viewing window as Daniel cracked open a new can. This one was blood orange. The hiss triggered a soft gasp from the crowd. He raised the can in mock salute. To adaptation, he said, and took a long drink. The can hissed. The bubbles fizzed. The sting danced behind his nose. And in a galaxy full of beings who sterilized hulls with the same liquid he now sipped through a straw, Daniel Myers became officially the first man in recorded interstellar history to be awarded an honorary cross-cultural hazard endurance emblem. It looked suspiciously like a bottle cap, but he wore it with pride.